You know what they call people who come to a library on a Friday night? It's my fellow people, fellow nerds unite, right?
Brad Meltzer is entertaining and inspiring.
We all have holes in our lives, these moments that drag us down. And the only way to climb out is with forgiveness for yourself, with some decency, with some humility, with some hard work.
It's a lesson he seems to not just be preaching.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for supporting me, whether it's the kids' books, whether it's the fiction, whether it's the nonfiction, whether it's the TV shows, the comic books, or anything else. I so appreciate it.
That's the real reason so many came out in the cold on a Friday night to meet this heavy hitter. All of these titles in all of those genres.
I think good stories are everywhere.
And Meltzer has a knack for turning them into New York Times bestsellers.
You could call it America's first great conspiracy, but at this moment, America doesn't yet exist.
It started with a footnote Meltzer noticed almost a decade ago and just couldn't let go.
And I was like, is that real? Is that nonsense on the internet? What is it? 5 years went by, I'm still thinking of this thing. I'd find myself, just checking it out, seeing what's about. And when 5 years go by and you have an idea, it means it's time to do the idea.
But it wasn't that easy. After all, it was a secret plot that Washington eventually discovers and hangs one of the co-conspirators in front of a large crowd to send a message. But that happens just days before the biggest day in our nation's history, July 4th, 1776. Talk about getting overshadowed. Experts warned Meltzer it would be a tough book to write. He and co-author Josh Mensch's research was only that until a certain discovery.
Well, one of the things that George Washington did is he started a secret committee to look at this plot. And he put John Jay in charge of it, who became the first Supreme Court justice. But at this time, he's just working for George Washington in this small committee. And they're knocking on doors, they're pulling people out of their houses in the middle of the night, they're checking suspects and interrogating them. But what they're really doing in the process is they're building America's first counterintelligence agency. And to this day, in Virginia, in Langley, at CIA headquarters, there's a room dedicated to John Jay, the founding father, they call him, of counterintelligence. And the breakthrough came when we found the transcripts of the secret committee's tribunal. And this was the key moment, right? Because George Washington doesn't write about it. He barely says a word about it. On the day that he hanged the man in front of 20,000 people, barely mentions it. If I murdered someone in front of 20,000 people, I'd be like, "Dear diary, had a bad day," right? George Washington plays his cards so close to the vest, barely says a word. But John Jay and the secret committee, when they tried this man, there were witnesses called, there were people brought to testify, sworn under oath, and thankfully, there was someone writing a full transcript. And when we got that, I was like, okay, the whole thing kind of cracked open.
And that information you found where?
It was, the funny thing is it's not in the regular court system because it was a quiet one, so it was in the New York Provincial Congress records. And I love to imagine us as I'm Indiana Jones and I crawl through the cobwebs and then I unearth this arcane information and present it in this book.
Right.
But the reality is the information's online. You can find much of it in all these places. It's just that no one wants to read it. We just took the time to actually read it. And there's great stories out there.
Oh, it's so interesting. It's a great book in that you know what happens, obviously. We all know what happened with history, but you read it with anticipation of wondering how it all happens, right?
And there's things you just never would ever know. Like, one of the things that I loved is finding out that George Washington had his own personal bodyguards and that he went to all of his top officers and he said, "Give me your 4 best men." He wanted what they call drilled men, the best of the absolute best. And one of the things he did is he personally, George Washington himself, narrowed down to about 50 men. Like, these were the inner circle. These were the ones he trusted, the best of the very best. And they were called the General's Guard. They were called the Commander's Guard. But the name that stuck, well, they called them the Lifeguards, because one of the things they watched was George Washington's life. They were literally the guards of his life. And these were the men who turned on George Washington. And I don't care how strong a general you are. I don't care that you're the first president. That's a moment that's devastating for George Washington. And none of us know that story. And you better believe I was like, this is going in the book too.
It really makes you realize, when you learn about history in school, it's like the Revolutionary War, yeah, it was tough, but we won. But this takes it to the nth level where you realize, oh my gosh, all the obstacles that George Washington had to kind of surmount to get to where we could win a war against this powerhouse, Great Britain.
Yeah, and what we do with our heroes today is we dip them in granite, we build statues of them, right? And we do them no good service when we do that. We forget that they're human beings.
Right.
And anyone you look up to, whether it's George Washington, whether it's Rosa Parks, whether it's Dr. King, whether it's someone in your own family, you say, that's my hero. They had moments where they were scared and they were terrified. They had moments where they didn't think they could go on, but they kept going. And it's the same with George Washington.